Well, let's get the latest on that big breaking story. Heathrow Airport closed all day today in response to a significant power outage linked to a fire at an electrical substation. We can speak now to the Times' transport correspondent, Ben Clatworthy. Morning, Ben. What's the latest?
Good morning, James. Yes, there's been a huge impact overnight of this fire at Heathrow. More than 150 flights have been diverted, but just in the last couple of minutes, I've been told that today over 1,300 flights are going to be cancelled, according to Flight Radar. There was a huge fire at a substation in West London overnight. The airport's said that it has had no option but to close for the entire day. Heathrow is Europe's busiest airport.
You mentioned this fire. It's at an electrical substation. There is footage online, and it is very dramatic footage, but it's amazing to think that one fire at one substation can close Europe's busiest airport.
It is. More than 16,000 homes are without power because of the fire at this one substation. But yes, you would think, and there will be serious questions being asked at the centre of government over why Heathrow doesn't have a way of backup source of power. The disruption that is caused today will last for days. There will be planes out of position. There will be hundreds of thousands of passengers who are disrupted and will be struggling to rebook onto already busy flights in the coming days. So this is going to have a huge impact, and no doubt once the dust settles, the chief executive of Heathrow will be hauled in front of MPs to explain how this could happen.
Obviously, if you were due to get a flight from Heathrow today, that ain't happening. But what about the flights that are in the air at the moment? Where are they being diverted to?
So some flights are being diverted to other airports within the UK. Gatwick has said in the last couple of minutes that it is ready to support in terms of diversions as well. But a lot of overnight flights, it's a very popular red-eye route from both the Far East and America. Many of those have turned around or been diverted to other airports abroad as well. So there will be huge disruption. If you are due to travel today, the advice is not to go to Heathrow. You will need to contact your airline. While you will not be entitled to compensation because this is outside of the airline's control, they do have a duty of care to you. However, when in a situation as large as this, it may be difficult to get through to your airline. If you are abroad, you can book yourself a hotel. You can also get yourself food and drinks, non-alcoholic drinks. If you keep the receipts, you will be able to claim them back. Also, if you're diverted to a different airport in the UK, you can book public transport to get yourself to where you need to go and send those receipts back to the airline as well. But if you're not in a position to pay, it is worth knowing that the airline does have a duty of care to you and should be providing you with assistance.
Yeah, it's really good advice. In their statement, Heathrow Airport have said that the airport is going to be closed until midnight tonight at the earliest. In your experience, Ben, could it be longer?
I mean, this is, and I hate the word, but this is unprecedented. It is only 5 o'clock in the morning. Midnight is a long way away. What we know is that they will be working their damn hardest in order to reopen the airport. The hit is going to be massive to the airlines. There will no doubt be a row over who is responsible for this as well. But what I would say is even if Heathrow does reopen at midnight as planned, the knock-on of this will last 4 days.
Yeah. Just finally, you mentioned it's unprecedented. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe that volcanic ash cloud back in 2010, but I mean, that was a kind of force of nature thing. Is there anything you can compare this to from your experience?
The biggest thing to generally affect airports in the UK is some sort of weather event. There's been fog, terrible fog at Heathrow. I forget how many years ago that was, probably 15 years ago, where Heathrow was closed for days, shrouded in fog. But nothing that I can think of off the top of my head where something like this has caused Britain, well, Europe's busiest airport, to be completely closed, and what we know for basically 24 hours.
Ben, we always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the update. That's the Times' transport correspondent Ben Clatworthy there with the latest on the closure of Heathrow Airport. And Ben's going to be popping up throughout the morning on Times Radio, keeping you posted. If you are just waking up, the breaking news overnight is that Heathrow Airport is closed all day today in response to what is being called a significant power outage linked to a fire at an electrical substation. And just to repeat that advice that Ben quoted there from Heathrow Airport, their advice is very clear that if you did have a flight booked at Heathrow today, the advice is not to travel to Heathrow and to speak to your airline instead. We can get the latest now from the travel journalist Simon Calder.
Europe's busiest airport, London Heathrow, is going to be completely closed on the busiest day of the week. More than 1,350 flights, over 200,000 passengers will not be flying to, from or through London Heathrow. We haven't seen anything like this, I think, since 2010 and the volcanic ash cloud. But for this to wipe out all operations at Europe's busiest airport is just off the scale in terms of the disruption, both economically and, of course, emotionally. An awful lot of people with really important trips to make today.
Yeah, and of course this is because of a fire at an electrical substation that's basically wiped out a lot of the power, it would seem, at Heathrow Airport. But it is remarkable that a fire at one substation can have this impact, can shut down Europe's busiest airport.
This is critical national infrastructure, and of course there will be multiple backups, but my understanding is that the scale of the fire is simply so bad that people are simply unable to get the huge demands for electricity that Heathrow has. It, of course, everything from the runway lights to the IT system depends on electricity, and if you do not have a good, reliable supply, then nothing is going to be taking off or landing. I imagine that we will see the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, coming out and saying exactly what the government is going to be doing. But at the moment, it is simply a matter of waiting to see how bad the effects are and whether indeed you can get all the electricity you need for somewhere the size of Heathrow from other sources. I think this is a problem that could be rumbling on for days, and of course it's terribly upsetting for anybody whose flight is cancelled today, because they will simply have no idea when they might reach their destination.
And Simon, what about the flights that are already in the air that were due to land at Heathrow? Presumably they are now being diverted, but to where?
Flights coming in from Cape Town, Johannesburg, Lagos, Singapore on British Airways, they're, in a sense, the lucky ones. They've landed at London Gatwick. So for many people, that will be good enough. Of course, there will be hundreds of passengers on those flights due to be connecting elsewhere, and they will be wondering what happens. Shannon in the west of Ireland is getting to see quite a lot of traffic. British Airways flights from New York and Barbados have landed there, and also Virgin Atlantic from Atlanta, and anybody coming in from Perth or Singapore on Qantas is now at Paris Charles de Gaulle. About 120 flights in the air when the closure announcement came through, and of course once those are down, then the situation will be a little bit clearer, but it's going to be incredibly difficult getting everybody where they need to be, not least because when Heathrow is switched on again, it's not simply a matter of saying, right, let's help everybody who's not been able to travel. All those people go to the back of the queue, and it is people with existing bookings who are going to take priority.
So if you are one of those people who was due to fly from Heathrow, say today, what should you do?
All you can do is wait. The airport is absolutely clear about telling people not to travel to Heathrow. There will be, of course, people across the UK, across Europe, across the rest of the world with flights into London Heathrow. Those, if they're due to arrive today, will not be taking off. There's a huge question mark, of course, about all the departures later on today, which would be coming in from East Asia, places like Tokyo and Hong Kong and Singapore, whether those will actually depart. Incredibly, British Airways, a long time relatively speaking, after this closure was announced, was still selling tickets to Heathrow today. I just tested the system and I bought one at 4 o'clock in the morning from Glasgow to Heathrow. That will not be taking off, and I've strongly suggested that they should immediately stop selling those tickets.
That's the travel journalist Simon Calder with the latest on the closure of Heathrow Airport. If you are just waking up, some big breaking news overnight. Heathrow Airport is closed all day today in response to what is being called a significant power outage linked to a fire at an electrical substation. If you've got a flight at Heathrow that was due to take off today, well, that's clearly not happening. The advice from the airport is not to travel to the airport. Speak to your airline. Obviously, this is going to cause enormous disruption. We will keep you posted throughout the day here on Times Radio. Times Radio Breakfast with Rosie Wright and Callum McDonald this morning on the way